This video is a short version of my analysis of Romeo and Juliet's first encounter, the sonnet, and it focuses solely on stylistic devices. In order to give you a good overview, I have taken these stylistic devices here separately and we will look at them separately so that you get a clear overview of what's going on. Altogether, you can say that all the stylistic devices you can find, and there are surely many more, all point in the same direction when it comes to interpretation. So basically, in a class test, you would of course take these all together. The first thing you want to focus on when you get a passage of text like this, in this case a sonnet, is the choice of words. And if you do that, I've already marked them here, you realize that in here there are a lot of words that refer to religion. So this is religious vocabulary. You will see that many of the stylistic devices we will look at refer to the same idea, are based on the same connotations. So this is your first step. Thinking of religion, I would say it could underline the purity of this love, so referring to innocence. This is a very young love. They aren't experienced with love, so that's one idea. The other thing, contrasting this, we said the entire play is based on pairs, but also on contrast at the same time. So you could say using religious words for something sexual, in this case even something sinful, as Romeo and Juliet aren't acting according to the laws at that time. You cannot just start kissing. It could be meant in an ironic way because these religious words are used for something sexual. If you follow along with this train of thoughts, then of course this would be blasphemy and stands in direct contrast to innocence and purity. One of our leitmotifs is contrasts. So you see holy and sin as a direct contrast, smooth and rough, good, wrong, saints and pilgrims, and so on. So this thing is full of contrasts, opposites, antithesis. And of course, if you pick out the ones that you can find here, so holy versus sin, good versus wrong, saint versus pilgrim, faith versus despair, you've again got the same idea of purity opposing sin. So as Romeo refers to himself as pilgrim, which is originally somebody who sinned and then goes on a pilgrimage to be forgiven, visit a saint who is pure and can restore his innocence if you want. You contrast him with Juliet, who is called by Romeo a saint and also then refers to herself as a saint. You've got the contrast between pure Juliet versus sinful Romeo. This interpretation is underlined by the fact that Romeo is actually actively moving into this sin, whereas the saint Juliet doesn't move and is just waiting for the kiss to happen. So he's the active part in this, rather the sinful part, whereas Juliet is the saint, the pure part, awaiting what's happening. Of course, another contrast that could be underlined here is the contrast between the loving couple opposed to from the two families opposed to the feuding families. So there's the contrast between pure love and then hate in these families. One of the next themes that's repeated all over in the play is pairs, doubles, and these of course can be found in the device of repetition. And if you look at what I've marked here, you can find several pairs that belong together or words that are mentioned twice. So we've got, for example, lips and kiss that form a pair. Pilgrims is here twice. Saints is repeated. You could say that pilgrim and saint in a way form a pair. Palm to palm, so two hands and the palmers belong together. And maybe saints and pray. Prayer is repeated throughout this passage. So these words are repetitions. Some of them form pairs. So I would say what's remarkable about these pairs or repetitions is that they, again, within these, so lips and kiss, which is the sin then here if you want, contrast the saints again, the pilgrim contrasts the saints, hands or prayer contrasts the lips and the kiss. So within these repetitions you sort of have the same opposites as before when we looked at contrast. So therefore this underlines again the idea of purity versus sin. The last stylistic device I want to look at is metaphors, and also in the case of the blushing pilgrims you could probably speak of personification. If you look at the metaphors that I've marked here, you can see again that they stand in contrast. So we've got the holy shrine, Juliet, contrasting the blushing pilgrims, which is part of Romeo, the lips, and then pilgrims and saints again, which could also be seen as a metaphor for pilgrim Romeo and Saint Juliet. Also, if you look at the quatrains, you've got the first quatrain is about the pilgrim Romeo, the second quatrain is about the saint Juliet, which is a contrast. Then you've got interaction and the result that they two form a pair again. So in conclusion, we can say that all the stylistic devices we found underline the contrasts and also the pairs that you find in Romeo and Juliet, so the same themes that come up over and over throughout the play. The purity of the love, maybe, versus the feud within the family, so Capulet versus Montague, love versus hate. Also the young couple versus their parents, the old feud. And in many other passages of the text you will also find light versus darkness, which again can be lined up with this theme. The last cool feature I want to draw your attention to, if you look at the sonnet and take in the first line of the quatrain that follows this sonnet, so you could say the first line of the next sonnet. That's not a full sonnet though. If you look at the green bits here, so everything to do with sin, that's sort of like a frame for all the red bits here that have to do with love, kisses, devotion. This underlines the contrast again between the feud of the families that surrounds Romeo and Juliet's love. So sin and hate versus purity as a recurring theme that can be found in all the stylistic devices we have looked at. So that would be your conclusion. I hope this helped you. See you in the next video.